Welcome to the Beyond Bound Coach and AD Professional Development Series, a weekly online professional development for athletic administrators and coaches. Join us as 6 former ADs now employed by Bound and with over 100 years of combined experience discuss topics important and beneficial to ADs and coaches. Join us on this journey of professional growth. We're here to help you take your coaching and athletic administration to the next level and beyond.
All right. Well, hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our next installment of Beyond Bound, professional development for ADs and coaches, put together by ADs and coaches. I'm excited to have you join us, and I'm joined today by a bunch of old ADs and then myself, of course. So I should say seasoned ADs, seasoned and wise ADs, and then me on that. But anyway, hey, thanks for joining us this morning. And as always, we hope this is something you can pull some information out of and then hopefully quickly put into play, into action with your coaches or within your own team. That's the goal of this. We want to share our experiences, share the lessons we've learned, both good and bad, from all the years of being ADs and coaches. And again, hopefully those ideas are going to be something you can grab onto or might inspire you to, oh man, I can do something with that, or that's something I've been looking for to have some conversations about, and it can spark you into action on that. So without further ado, let's jump into today's session. Now, I've got to be honest with you, I've been all over the place on this. And so I got to remind you kind of the journey we've been on, at least with my presentation. So last time around, we talked about vision and mission. We talked about the process of establishing a vision or mission in your program that I went through when I was the AD at Kennedy High School. Again, not necessarily the right or the perfect version of it. It's just what we did and how we did that. And so that's what I try to share is our experiences. So we went through that. That was back on, I think it was March 8th. So if you want to review that back on March 8th, that's what we did. Now, I've been doing this whole thing entirely out of order. You go back to January, I talked about setting standards of excellence. And then I came back, worked my way backwards to talk about vision and mission. And now I'm going to fast forward into today's topic on this is, all right, so you've got this vision and mission. You've gone through the work to talk about who you are, how you operate, who you want to become, what kind of impact and influence you want your programs to have on the student athletes that are part of your program. So you've got all this information, you've got all these cool words, logos, slogans, whatever you're doing with it, and you put it on a poster. Now what? And that's where a lot of people will get stuck. They do this hard work, and then they want to take a break because that was really hard work, and then they don't do the next step, which is the most important step of put that in action. What's it look like in your programs? And so that's what today's topic and talk is going to be about, is just some ideas to get it going on. All right, let's take it from being a poster to being something that we put into action. What's it look like in your programs? How do you teach it in your programs? That vision mission, how do you make it come to life? And that's what we're going to get to today. Again, if it's just a poster on the walls in your office, or it's a poster in your locker rooms, you've missed the point. So let's get into talking about making this actionable on this. All right. A reminder, I kind of walked through that vision mission process we went through at Kennedy. Across the top of this slide, you see that every athlete future ready. That was our mission, or vision that we landed on. It correlated well with our school district vision and mission. The school district was every student future ready. So, all right, let's take that. We're part of the district vision and mission in our athletic programs and trying to bring that to life. So we made that every athlete future ready. And then our mission there is across the bottom. We want to build a positive competitive spirit in our student athletes, and we want to instill in them this pursuit for the best version of themselves through the platform of sport. So that when they're done with our programs, they are people who are going to be out there saying, look, I'm ready to take life on. I'm ready to take on whatever's next. I'm going to attack it, and I'm going to pursue the best version of myself through that process. We want to build process-driven student athletes, if you really want to boil that down. So that's what we were trying to build. So the next conversation we needed to have is, all right, so what's that look like, and how do we bring that to life? And you'll see there on the left side, I've got developed skill sets, and I've got core values in parentheses. I don't care what you call this. A lot of people use the terminology core values. Let's establish our core values, because those core values are going to be, if we can instill those in our student athletes through our programs, then our vision, our mission are going to come to life. They're going to happen, right? I probably used core values for a long time. And honestly, Dr. Amber Selking with the championship mindset, with her group, Selking Performance Group, and talking about building a championship mindset, she talked about developing skill sets. And I think I've talked about this before. The reason I really bought into the idea of skill sets is because skill sets has a connotation to it of it's something that can be learned and developed and improved upon. Whereas core values, I think sometimes our kids, we might know as adults what, core values are something you can work on and build and develop, but kids might hear core values and they see that as a characteristic or a trait you're born with. And I either have it or I don't. And some kids might get shut out to the idea that if they've got a negative self-concept of themselves, that, well, I don't have that value. I'm not trustworthy. I'm not a hard worker. And they then will turn off to try to do the work on it because they just don't think they have that trait or that characteristic. Whereas if you talk about it as a skill set, it can be developed and learned no matter where your starting point is. All right. So we started having a conversation wrapped around, all right, what skills, if we're going to build student athletes through our programs that are future ready, that are process driven, that want to use whatever platform they're involved in to pursue the best version of themselves, what skill sets do we need to develop in them so they can take that on to the next level? And so that's our discussion. That's where we went to. We've been playing around with the idea of using this Beyond Common discussion. We've been having that for a while in our coaching staff and using our mascot as an acronym. So you'll see that on the screen there. I think I've shared this in the past with you guys, but that our mascot was the Cougars. And so we said, let's take these 7 things, using our mascot as an acronym. So courageous, optimistic, uncomfortable, generous, accountable, relentless, stable. And we had discussions on the idea of if we can instill those 7 skill sets through the platform of our athletic programs in our student athletes that participate in them, then that vision of every athlete being ready to take on their future and be process driven and pursue the best for themselves, they're going to be ready to go. If they can be risk takers, if they can be willing to become uncomfortable so that they can grow it and learn new things and new skills, if they can find ways to serve others first versus serve themselves first, if they can find ways to pursue things relentlessly, if they can manage the ups and downs of life and be emotionally stable, they're ready to take on their future. So that was step number 1 for us after we had our vision mission, is let's wrap our heads around some skill sets that are core to our what we're trying to teach our kids. The next step then was to the right, on the right side there. What does that look like and how do you teach it? And I mentioned before, when I was talking about standards of excellence, I said we talked about, the process of setting those standards of excellence took a whole year of coaching staff meetings. Well, and I said, remember I talked about it, I said we took 15 minutes of every 45-minute meeting and we talked about setting our standards of excellence. The other half hour of each one of those meetings for an entire year was going through these 7 skill sets and having coaches present and have discussions on what this looks like in their programs. So I would have a good one of my coaches who I felt built a courageous mindset within their program, built risk takers. They were always on the edge, always willing to push the edge of the envelope and make mistakes to learn and get better so that by the end of the year, there was nothing they hadn't seen and they weren't afraid of what was going to come next. And I would have that coach step up and talk about how they built that in their program. How do you coach it? How do you teach it? How do you know your kids are building a courageous, risk-taking mindset? I'd have another coach who I just thought their kids could just always, no matter what was going on, they were even keel, level-headed kids. Well, that's an emotionally stable and emotionally mature program. Coach, can you talk for 15, 20 minutes about how you build that in your program? So in that half hour, I was telling my coaches, use 10 to 15 minutes to talk about your program and how you build it, how you teach it in your program. And then it was in 15 minutes of small group breakout sessions. But we did that for the 7 of those 9 monthly meetings we had with our coaches, where we took each one of those words and we had a half-hour discussion wrapped around what's it look like, and we shared ideas and shared processes, and our coaches grew through that, and they were charged the idea of, okay, take that back to your program and figure out a way that you're going to build a generous, team first, servant leader mindset within your program. If that's something you think you have to improve to take the next step as a program, or go build an accountable mindset within your program based on what we talked about today. So that was the process that we went through in this. And since I did it all backwards and out of order, so what we did is we set our vision and our mission. We had those tough discussions and we defined who we were, what we're trying to accomplish, what we wanted to be about and known for. And then we did the setting the standards of excellence, and we did our skill set development work, kind of coinciding. But this process took a whole year for us to do. on that. And so I want to share that because I think it's important. I think some people think this, they're afraid of it because it's going to take a long time to do. It is. All right. This isn't something you have one meeting and boom, here you go. All right. So take the time. They're important conversations to have to set or reset or reignite the idea of building your culture within your programs on that. All right. Before I bring in the crew to kind of talk about their experiences wrapped around this, just want to let you know that I was just saying, if you've been thinking about this process or think we've got to revisit this, but you can't find the right time, as Todd Gordon always tells us, just start. There's never a right time. There's never a perfect time, and you're never going to have enough time if you're waiting for it. So just start. And second of all, any of us in this group right now, plus Brian Peterson as Bound Directors, more than willing to jump on board and help walk through this process or set this up, I'm sure. So you could contact any one of us, and we would be happy to have discussions with you and help you get this process going. So with that, I want to move to the smart side of the room, and I want to bring in the experts on this. And I kind of set them up, just asking them to think about some of the conversations they've had with their coaches or with their programs over the years to help coaches' visions or come to life, to help them actually create a system where they're developing the things that they want to develop in the kids, that they're having the impact and influence within the programs they want to have. So I was going to start with Joey, and then we'll go to Todd, Mark, and then Mr. Jarvis will back clean up today. So Joey.
All right. Well, you're going to have to wait. You're going to have to wait for a little bit to move to the smart side of the room, at least until after I'm done.
Yeah.
This is a great topic. I'm glad you've chosen this one. And it all starts with defining that mission and your values. Once you do that, once you've got those, all of the decisions that you make going forward are a lot easier, because all you have to do is look, okay, how is this decision? How is this going to further my vision and my mission of my programs? So it becomes a lot more clear. What should I do? How do I proceed? Once you have that defined. So defining that is the very first step in order to move forward. And if you have coaches who are struggling to fulfill that, what am I doing wrong? How can I do that? What some of the things that I've done, and I probably have mentioned this before, that we've used the 3D coaching model. Let's go through that whole program. If you need to learn how to set up your own mission, your own vision for your program, even after we've done the one for the department, here, let's do this. How can we win those the heart behind the jersey? How can we do that? So I've gone through that with them to help them more clearly define their program. I've used the Winning Leader Academy with Jeremy Boone with some coaches, but sometimes you still have someone who just struggles to make that change. They default back to their own way, how they were coached. And in our generation coming up, we were coached way differently than you can coach now. You can't coach without giving the kids the why of it all. They need to know why. We didn't care why. We didn't know there was a why. It was just because I was told to. So if they still struggle, you can place. What would you do with the classroom teacher? You'd place them on a plan of assistance. You work with them in order to help them further their abilities. And let's face it, coaching is a classroom skill. If you can't, you have to be able to teach, and you have to be able to connect with your kids. So putting them on a written plan of assistance doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing. It's just a roadmap to outline, how do we get to where you want to be? Here are the things we're going to do. So, and one of the things that I've determined is that one of the biggest questions that they fail to answer is, how much of your practice time do you spend and do you dedicate in your written practice plan to furthering your mission and explaining and outlining and defining your mission to your team? Because they have to understand it. And if it's a mist in your mind, it's a fog in theirs. If you don't completely understand it, there's no way you can get it across to your team. So getting them to understand it and relating it to the team.
That's great stuff, Joey. And the thing I really like, the last thing you're talking about there with the intentionality of it, because that was what I was trying to get to with having coaches talk about how they build it into their system and their program and stuff. It was great to hear when you start asking your coaches those types of questions, it makes them think, well, do I spend any time? I want kids to, whatever your skill sets are, go back to ours. I want kids to be risk takers. Well, okay. How are you setting them up for that? Because if in the front 30 of your season, every time they try to steal a base when they shouldn't, or every single time they take a shot they shouldn't, and you're jumping on it, that's a stupid shot. Why would you take that shot? Dude, it was a 2-2 count. We're down 2 runs, whatever. Why would you steal on that? Well, how are they ever going to be risk takers if that's the way you're coaching them? So be intentional about the conversations you're having and how you're coaching if you want to have the impact you want to have down the road. I love the fact you brought up the intentionality in your practices, because it better be there in your practices and it better be there in your game planning, or they'll never learn it. Good stuff, Joey. All right, Mr. Gordon, we moved you up in the batting order because I want you to get more at-bats.
Boom. Great. This is such a good topic, and don't sell yourself short, Aaron. You're one of the best at bringing this out and teaching this process. You're tremendous at doing this. So thanks for bringing this up. This is very timely, I think, for a lot of us. Joey, your comment about mist and fog that's a great one to remember. If the coaches are misty about it, not quite knowing, the kids are going to be foggy. That's a great analogy. Fantastic thought. I went back to when I used to do one-on-one coaching leadership program with coaches, 3 or 4 sessions per year, talking about things in their program and how I did that. And we had things, in Carlisle, we had the Wildcat Way, we had the Ryder Way at Roosevelt, we had the Ram Way in Greene County. And in one of those, every time we met, I would take that let's say the Ram Way, Greene County, the last school I was at. And I would say, it's kind of your Cougars, you have that defined acronym. And I would say, which one of these are you doing really well right now? Because I think it's important for them to think about things that they're doing well, because they are. Even some of our worst or our most struggling coaches are doing some things well. Mm-hmm. So we would look at that Ram Way and we'd say, what are you doing well? And we'd talk about that. And then, of course, we'd flip it and we'd say, what's the one thing you need to work on? Maybe you need to work on, going back to the Cougars, you need to be courageous. I need to be more courageous, or my team needs to be more courageous or more resilient, whatever that word is from that skill set, because we've taken the skill set words and we've kind of defined those in that acronym. And then we would talk about that. And then we'd talk about 1 or 2 steps they could take, and not just say, well, I'm going to work on that. Well, what are you going to do? And as I come in and watch a practice, or I'm just walking through, what am I looking for? So you kind of get the look fors that I can see, and then I can talk to you about those. I didn't see you doing this, or you had an opportunity, I thought, to, talk about being more courageous after this game. Did you? So just really try to define and have them tell me things I can look for to help them. So that's a couple of things that I did through this process with coaches.
Man, I love that stuff. That's why we moved you up in the lineup, man. We want to get you, get your thoughts out there early. Man, I love the thing that, if you didn't catch it, folks, I think people I'm thinking about the evaluation process right now. And I think that sometimes we make that really hard. We think this got to be this formal, Likert scale, check the box, always, sometimes, 1 to 5, how well do you do this? You just talked about, in my opinion, professional development and evaluate. I'm going to call them evaluation conversations. Really, they're get better conversations. How can we be better tomorrow than we are today? Conversations. And what a crucial thing you just talked about there. You do it in the large group, but then individually with your coaches, talking about how do you want to get better? What can I look for? Because it leads to the conversations and it's that 5-minute conversation after a game, or it's a 5-minute conversation the next morning after a game, or it's a 5-minute conversation after practice that you just sat and walked through with. That'll be a formal process. It's hey, I kind of saw this, that looked really good. And you've always been so good at this, Todd. Little conversations that create incremental improvement and change. And when you have the important conversation of what do you want to get better at, and what do you want me to look for? Then you can set yourself up for those incremental small conversations that, in my opinion, have always had the bigger impact, not that formal district Likert scale checkbox evaluation. So Todd, you've always been so great at that. And if you ever want to talk to somebody about how to build one-on-one coaching professional development, Todd's your guy. So thanks, Todd.
I just think thank you for that. It's so less threatening.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't put them, you don't feel like you're putting them in a box or it's just a relationship driven is what it is.
Good stuff.
Thank you.
All right, Mark.
Yeah, I was muted there. Sorry. Yeah, thanks, Aaron. This is wonderful. And Joey and Todd, your comments, you guys make comments and then my head starts thinking of more things and then I don't know where I'm going because I always have to think about my thoughts. Or how does that go, Aaron? I can't remember what you said.
You're making me think about my thoughts. Have thoughts about my thoughts. Or thoughts about my
Yeah, there we
thinking.
go. I end up having thoughts about my thoughts. But just some small things I think that you can work with coaches on. We all have a practice schedule, a practice plan, I should say, that we carry with us. We put it in our pocket, we pull it out to see what the next drill is and so forth, or you review it with your other coaches before you go out to practice. Put your mission statement at the top of that. And so every time you open that up, you see that. Maybe your core values, or I like the word skill sets. I love that. I wish I had used that because skill sets to me are more tangible, more measurable, perhaps, for people to understand. And like you said, then you don't start thinking bad of yourself and I'm not a hard worker. It's something you can build on. Any skill that can be broken down can be built on. But anyway, so it's on the practice plan. That's a small little thing, but it's there. Every time you look at it, you see it. So that can spur you on as a coach during practice to look for opportunities to speak to these things, reflect on how a drill went, review that with the athletes, building in those skill sets into that conversation of how the drill went. You're not beating them up over it. Sometimes I worry when coaches become too preachy, it turns kids off. But if you just build it in, it becomes kind of an impromptu, natural thing that you talk about. That courageous. Yeah. We were really courageous in that drill. And I saw so-and-so and that's one of our skill sets we work for every day. Right, guys? And just build those things in so they become natural. Your young coaches may not feel good about talking about core values and skill sets, but if they build them in little pieces, they'll become more natural. The teams will accept it more. And then when you do want to become preachy, you've already set the groundwork for that. You've laid the footings for that. The foundation is set, and then you can be a little more preachy. Let's see. There's one other thought I had. The 3D coaching. Joey mentioned that. I think that's just awesome. Get your coaches doing that, and that covers for a lot of things there. So awesome, Aaron.
Good stuff, Mark. Thanks. And I love. I'll go back to that intentionality. I love the intentionality of if I put that mission statement, the impact and influence we're trying to have on our student athletes every day in practice at the top of that practice plan, it should just naturally weave itself into as you're building that plan and carrying that plan out. It's just a constant reminder. This is what we're trying to teach. This is our why. To go back to what Joey was talking about, this is our why, and we better work this in every single day.
Can I add one more thing to that? Like after practice, often, as coaches, you gather and you review the practice and you reflect on how practice went. And I think as coaches, if you pull that out too, and let's go over this practice plan and how it went, and that's at the top, then as coaches, you start having dialogue about that. And, we could have built in a little bit more right here to talk about such and such, or coach might go, gosh, I missed an opportunity there. I won't let that happen again. Yep. And it becomes self-reflective for your staff, not just as an individual.
Yep. The other thing you talked about there, Mark, that I love is the idea of catching make sure it's top of mind, because if it's top of mind and you see it, you can call it out and recognize it in your practice or in your games. And that's how you're going to start to build it. Because if you catch somebody carrying out one of your skill sets and excelling and demonstrating that really well, and you bring attention to it right away, well, wow, coach really values that. That matters to our coaching staff, and they're going to look for opportunities to demonstrate the same and grow in that area as well. So another great thing, make it top of mind and then jump on it when you see it. And I'm saying that in a good way, and celebrate, and that'll build it faster. Good stuff, Mark. And Mr. Jarvis.
So, yeah. Mark, I love the fact that you talked about that planning, and I think that led back to even what Joey said about just being intentional and having those coaches go through that growth plan. And Todd talked about that too. But one thing that Todd said that kind of struck me is just having the ability to define what we're looking for. So it goes back to Aaron, having those skill sets or those core values are so important in what we do. I think as ADs, as coaches, one of the best things or most important things we do is go and find great people to work with our kids. And to do that, we need to know who we are. We need to have all this mission, vision, philosophy. We need to have those, what do we expect of our kids? That all needs to be, we need to onboard our kids, just like when you're going into a new job, you get onboarded. We need to onboard our kids every year to make sure that they understand what we expect and what our core values or skill sets are. So I get back into that whole thing of, we need to share that story with our coaches, with our student athletes. And we need to, as Mark stated, continually develop that within practice. It doesn't need to be something extra, because we all know coaching's not easy. Being an AD is not easy. And it doesn't need to be something extra. It needs to be a part of what we're doing and how important that is. And I go back to that growth plan concept. Mm-hmm. So Aaron, you discussed that evaluation and getting away from the check mark, Likert scale, 1 to 5, or, meet standard or exceed standard or whatever. I always loved having those narrative evaluations. We were just sitting back and talking about, what are we going to do to get better? Not even an assistance plan like Joey talked about, but a growth plan. We are going to get better. We're going to grow through this. So what things together can we work on that's going to make our program better, make our coaches better, make our student athletes better, make our relationships better, have better strategy, have better X's and O's, have better strength, whatever that is, we need to have those growth. And then again, that alignment, and everybody's talked about this, is making sure we know who we are and then sharing that story and making sure we use that all the way through. We use that in our hiring. We use that in our retention and recruitment. We use that in our evaluation, and we use that for our professional development.
Good stuff, Scott. As always on that, I'm going to piggyback off what you just got done talking about and kind of maybe wrap this thing up, because, again, going back through my January discussion to the March discussion to wrapping this thing up today, and all the things we talked about wrapped on this. We're talking about building your culture and engaging in developing that culture and or building or improving your culture. All this work that you do, in my opinion, if you haven't done it yet, you need to do it. And in doing this work, it does, and go back to Joey talking about the 3D thing, what it does for your coaches, what it does for you as an AD, what it does for your athletic program is it moves you further along from being transactional to being transformational. When you start having these discussions about who you are, what you want to be about, what influence you want to have, how we're going to carry that out, and how we're going to develop the skill sets that make that happen, you are talking about developing lifelong successful people through the platform of your program, and that's transformational. And you may not win as many games as people would like you to win from time to time, but people can't argue with the influence and impact you're having through the platform of education athletics if you're transformational about it. And this process of building and having intentional, active conversations about your culture and building your culture the right way move you from transactional to transformational. And that's what matters most when you have influencing kids and influencing your community through the platform. So If you haven't done the work, do the work. If you need help with that, reach out to us, and we'd be happy to do that with you. With that, I'm going to wrap this thing up. Thanks for joining us. Guys, as always, thanks for your wisdom, your insight. I always learn more from you than I ever pass on to others. So thank you very much for all of you joining us out there. Thanks. Best of luck as you take on this endeavor. Summertime's a great time to kind of plan this out and think it out. So as we move towards the end of the school year, maybe set that as a goal this summer of addressing this, your culture, and how you're going to improve upon your culture or build it to be better next year. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for doing the work out there, and let's be better today.